It doesn't matter who you are, where you work, or how long is your experience. If you're doing endodontics, you have a nightmare related to root canal treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Endocast. This is the first of a series of podcasts hosted by Ahmed Shawky. Hi Ahmed.
Hi Francesca. And of course by Francesca Cerutti. This first episode aims to comment on the results of a poll that was submitted to the followers of Stile Italiano Endodontics on Facebook and Instagram.
What do you think about endodontic nightmares? Will they disappear one day, probably? Are they a fact or a myth?
Actually, I believe that endodontic nightmares are dynamic in nature. So they grow as we grow older in the profession. So in the beginning, we might be afraid or have a nightmare of not finding some canals. Then something grows up to be a nightmare of breaking files. And then when you grow older in the profession, become more professional, sometimes you are afraid of some calcification. So they won't ever stop. They will grow with us unless we stop doing endo.
Which is a solution.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's go focusing on our poll. We asked the people to state what was the worst endodontic nightmare, and I started giving these 5 options, but they were free to add their own nightmares. And among these, what do you think arrived in the first place?
It's easy. We all hear it all the time. The file breakage must be the winner. And to be fair, sometimes 2 nightmares can be closely related because it's not uncommon to see a broken file with a strip perforation or a root perforation during a trial to remove that file. So sometimes 2 nightmares combined in the same tooth.
So a nightmare is born while trying to solve another nightmare. Fantastic solution.
Exactly. So that's pretty a fact when we are trying to solve complex situation like removing a file, then we do a perforation. So complex treatments sometimes have some complication, and we should be aware of that. And having a complication besides the original nightmare consumes a lot of time actually in the treatment.
Yeah. And the third option we gave was to do not find the root canals, which I think is one common nightmare when we start doing endodontics, because maybe we are not so sure about our reference point, above all when we treat extremely calcified teeth or teeth with extensive restoration and we lose the landmarks. What do you think?
Exactly. That happened especially with extensive restoration, which has been there for a long time. And we do not forget also calcifications, because calcification is a real nightmare, especially for newbies, new endodontists. So the fourth option was post-removal as well. We mentioned it before. It can be a nightmare because it can take a lot of time. And if you miss the post, you can drill a hole into the tooth, a perforation, I mean. So that was the fourth option in the poll.
Yeah. And last but not least, ineffective anesthesia. Think about that patient with the massive irreversible pulpitis, which is deeply in pain, and you try all of your techniques and you do a lot of anesthesia and still it's not working. So it's like a huge stress for everyone. And so the whole procedure is going to be more complex, more difficult. And I think that when it happens to you, you exactly remember the name of the patient and the exact moment in which you were doing that precise root canal treatment.
Exactly. I remember some of the patients in the old days that suffered with them, and I made them tougher because I didn't know then which type of the anesthesia that I can use, which device maybe I can add to my equipment, and also some techniques. We need to use some supplemental techniques in order to save the time and save the suffer for the patient. So let's take a look at the results of the poll, and the undisputed winner is
file breakage.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It seems like it's the worst endodontic nightmare of the Style Italiano endodontic followers. And then we have perforations, so we were right, also for the second place. And then you see there are several other options, blocked and calcified canals. I didn't state them in the first 5 options, but a lot of people are afraid or don't like this kind of situation, as well as not find the root canal. And then we have several other options, sodium hypoaccident, for example, which is something that when happens, it's very difficult to manage. And you go on and you see other options, ledges, post-operative pain, the failure of the treatment. People are not so afraid of ineffective anesthesia, so probably that was not a problem now. And one really made me impressed, which is some people have no nightmare. Guys.
Really?
Yes, I
really?
want to know you by name. The 7 people, I want to know you.
So probably if they don't have a nightmare, probably they didn't work a lot of endo, because when you work more in endodontics, you will face more complex cases and you will be exposed to some nightmares or some complexity in your treatments.
Yeah.
So actually, if they work more, they will gradually build up some nightmares.
And what do you think? Can we have false nightmares sometimes? So can we start thinking it's gonna be a very difficult treatment and then everything ends up smoothly?
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes you are facing with a long post that you think it will consume time, and there are a lot of complexity in the treatment, and maybe you tell the patient that this will take a lot of time, or sometimes a broken file that you think it will take a lot of time for you to remove it and complete the treatment, but it happens that the treatment goes smooth and everything is solved in just one visit. But in my opinion, the opposite can really happen, that you can see that the treatment is easy. It's like, just like this, you will solve the problem. And when you go into the case and start operating, you discover that the case is not that simple. And this comes the importance of the experience, of course, of the operator, just to spot on the difficulty of the case, and also the pre-treatment evaluation, because we need just to inform the patient also about the time that we will take in solving the situation.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes when it takes too long to you to solve the thing, the patient is like, doctor, how long is this taking again? So
yes. You told me that it will take 1 visit, so now it's 3 visits. So
why? What did you do?
By the way, I forgot to ask you about your worst nightmare.
Oh, well, it changed with aging and with more experience. So in the beginning, it was probably shaping the major root of lower molars because it was not easy to access, etc. Then when I started doing many root treatments, it was thermophyll removal because it took me a lifetime to do it. And now it's probably more surgery in lower molars. That's my nightmare nowadays. And what about yours?
Mine nowadays is calcifications. I don't like calcifications. They are, especially with partial treatments, I mean, because in many times we have partial treatments that were there for a long time, and when you remove the material, that is placed in the coronal part of the root canal system, and you are suffering going down. And according to literature, these cases are associated with a lot of complication during treatment, like perforation, and might ultimately be shifted to a surgery in many cases. And we get to back to Fabio in that, because he will do it better.
Yes.
So you told me that the members added a very interesting comment or selection in the list of the nightmares.
Yeah, I have to give an honorable mention to this, because I don't know whether it's real nightmare or not, but patient who doesn't pay the bill, it can be a nightmare if you took a lot of time to treat him.
Yeah, I think it's not a true nightmare, of course, but it can make your life difficult. It can leave you with a lot of less appreciation, and especially if you consume a lot of time as well as equipment and material in trying to solve the case. So at the end, if this is not equivalent to what you did and your efforts, so that can be give you a hard time. It's not a true nightmare. Not a true nightmare.
But it made me laugh.
So I got a question that jumped right now in my mind. It's actually sometimes happening. Does the surrounding environment can affect the behavior and performance of the practitioner? Because I see in the university when I teach in Cairo a lot of very skillful students, and along the year, so they perform very well. And in the exam, sometimes they perform a lot less than expected. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's all about the way in which we are able to manage our stress and the fact of doing something in front of the others, because you think about many skilled colleagues which don't want anyone in their room where they are operating because they have to focus and they don't want anyone disturbing them, or others who love the thrill of doing a live surgery in front of thousands of people. So, it's very operator dependent, I think. And the fact is that one of our followers wrote something that is very linked to what you said, because he said that his worst nightmare was to make a mistake in front of his teacher. So, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I believe that that's true, because we can even take something from the real life. When you know how to drive your car, and you are driving alone, but when you are going to the test, because you are going to take the license, you start trembling and doing a lot of bad things. Maybe you hit the car or hit somebody walking, maybe. So that's from life, and even in endodontics, it's true. It's very true. So now we mentioned a lot of options from the nightmares in the paw. We want to sum them up a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So if we watching from this point of view, most of the people was afraid of making iatrogenic damages or procedural errors. And so probably the fact that you did something that is going to affect negatively the outcome of your treatment and the prognosis of the tooth is a nightmare. So we are good people in the end, we endodontists. And then if you want to look at the graph, you can see the anatomy is another big nightmare.
Yes, the anatomy is something we cannot actually change. But as we will talk later, that we have just to adapt our strategy in the treatment according to the anatomy, because the anatomy is highly variable and we cannot do anything about it. But we did more. Once assessed that the pipe breakage was the worst endo nightmare, we asked why.
Yeah, because of course, when you break a file, because file breakage was the worst endodontic nightmare, obviously you can feel a series of emotions that are ranging from depression to stress to sadness, and you can also feel a sense of failure. What do you think about this?
In my opinion, it can be a reason for failure in the future. But if we really assess the situation, we can consider that everyone has the possibility to deal with a broken file because it's an advanced situation, and we need to have a practice. So a failure may be a failure to manage the anatomy, but it doesn't mean that you fail in the case. The case is failed, and it will go bad, because it's easy. If you know how to deal with it, the case won't fail. And in my recommendation to a lot of clinicians, if you don't know how to deal with it, you can refer to a specialist so that he has the right tools and he can deal with the case. So it's not a sensation of failure, it's a sensation of depression in the first place. But failure, I think we can handle it. We can handle it.
Yeah, true that. Also because, as you said correctly, sometimes it's not just about having the tools to remove the file, for example, but you also have to be able to use them. So you have to be skilled, you have to be experienced, and also, one step back, you have to know whether it's the case of trying to retrieve the file, or it's better, for example, to go for a bypass. So not every file has to be removed, in my opinion, even if nobody wants a file in his tooth, and this is for sure.
I think that you are very right in that aspect, because not all files are meant to be removed. Sometimes we can manage the case. The patients, when they know that something is inside the tooth, they request that, I'm afraid that this will give me a disease, and they list a lot of diseases that they are afraid of. And I remember it will get me cancer. So yeah. So in this aspect, you have to evaluate, because sometimes if you insisted on removing a file from the root canal based on the request of the patient that doesn't want that thing inside, you might end up perforating. And in this case, you might really affect the success rate, failure. So not all files shall be removed. Sometimes we bypass. Sometimes, in some cases, we leave and follow up, and some other cases we do an apical surgery. So this is very dynamic in the decision making.
Yeah. And our friend Ahmed, for example, added one clever comment, which was, it takes time to remove the file. So, as we were saying before, it's not only about the equipment, it's not only about the fact that we are frightened, we are not going to be able to retrieve because we can refer. It's not about the fact that we can make a iatrogenic damage, because if we know the anatomy, we can manage. We will talk about the outcome, but it takes time. If I break a file, maybe it takes me longer than I scheduled to manage the case. Or if I'm doing a retreatment and I find there is a separated file into the tooth, which I didn't see, for example, I have to tell the patient, well, we need one more appointment. So I have to explain him why. And so it's difficult, it's hard.
Yeah, it's very stressful. And I think if you, as we mentioned before, that once you know or you break a file and you don't have the list of tools as well as the experience to use those tools, that will be a real nightmare. That will be a real nightmare. So next time we should talk about how to make the worst nightmare less terrifying, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Maybe how to prevent file breakage and how to manage separated files. And I'm finding as a perfect T-shirt for the occasion.
Yeah. That's great. That's great.
And
so we will see you next time in the next episode of the Endocast.
And please, guys, if you have some questions, doubts, comments, drop us a line and we will get back to you. So stay tuned and don't miss the next episode of Endocast.